review. So here this is episode 4, right? Like, what episode is this? This is episode 4.
4 already.
And there's so much to talk about. This is every time we do one of these, I'm like, I need to follow back about this, and then this came out a couple of weeks ago. I wanted to talk about. There's so much happening. So what have you been up to in the since episode 3? What have you been up to?
Okay, let me just say, and a few of you may get upset. I hope not. But lately, I've been watching my classic films all on streaming services. Lately. Yeah. Now, a few of you may already know this, but I am currently living with my parents, and there's only one Blu-ray DVD player that we have, and that is hooked up to the television in the family room. And my parents are constantly using that TV. So I can't really watch any of my discs unless they're out of the house or something.
That's really selfish. Can we get them in here? Let's have a talk with them.
Oddly enough, they're not home right now. So instead of doing this, I could be watching some of my discs, but regardless. So yeah, I've been watching all my films on streaming services, which is great because I think streaming services don't get enough credit as far as classic film is concerned, because people seem to think that classic film can only be found on DVD or Blu-ray or VHS. No, you know what? There are some streaming services that offer a great selection of classic film. One of them being Criterion Channel right now. Unfortunately, I know that Criterion Channel is only available in North America. I don't think it's available in places like the UK or Australia or any places like that. But beginning in March, they have what's called Paramount pre-codes. So I think it's something like 20 or 22 pre-code films from the Paramount Universal Vault. And I've just been going through that whole list. And the 3 highlights for me have been Murders in the Zoo from 1933. Guys, if you have not seen this film, and I don't know if it's available on DVD or Blu-ray, I think it could just be available online right now. I would highly recommend that everyone check it out, especially if you're into pre-codes, because prior to it being on Criterion, I had never heard of it before. And this is coming from someone who absolutely loves that era in filmmaking. But again, I had never heard of it. That film is shocking in the subject matter. I mean, within the first 5 minutes, there's some guy getting his mouth sewn shut, and then he gets eaten by jungle animals. Like, it's wild. So anyway, that was Murders in the Zoo from 1933, and it stars Charlie Ruggles, Lionel Atwill, who excelled at playing villains. I mean, on screen, the guy is demented. He is insane. Plus a really young Randolph Scott, which some of you may know from the Westerns he did in the 50s?
Mostly, yeah. Well, he made Westerns for a long time, but he really became like a major Western guy in the 50s, in my opinion. People will argue that, but yeah, he's in Westerns in the 30s, I believe, but the 50s, he's like the guy, you know. Yeah. He's one of those few guys who's just like, he rides the saddle, you know, like that kind of. Yeah.
No, I think you're absolutely right. But here you'll see him as a very young actor. So yeah, Murders in the Zoo. If you haven't seen it, check it out. The other 2 that I really enjoyed from Criterion Channel were This Is the Night. So that's with Cary Grant, Thelma Todd, my girl Thelma Todd, Roland Young, and Charlie Ruggles again. And that film just made me die laughing from beginning to end. I think it's just over an hour long, but I swear to God, guys, I was laughing like every line someone said, dying of laughter. The dialogue in that film is fantastic, and it's all about adultery. Yeah. So this is like pre-code prime material. And then the other one that I watched is The Cheat, which you also have, Heath, I think from Kino, starring Tallulah Bankhead.
Yeah, that's right.
That was another wild film. This was my first time seeing it. And there are scenes in that film, I don't want to ruin anything for those of you who have not seen The Cheat yet, but some scenes made me feel very uncomfortable as a woman. because our main character, played by Tallulah Bankhead, gets herself into these situations where she can't easily get out of them. So she racks up a huge gambling debt. And I mean, she faces sexual abuse and physical abuse and branding, like with a hot iron.
I was wondering if you were going to bring that up or not. Yeah, there's
it was insane, this film. So those were the 3 highlights that I've watched this month out of that whole Criterion pre-code programming spotlight.
That's fantastic. I want to talk to you about that because I'm one of those people who I just did a video about this and I was like, I know I said something to the effect of what you just said, which is that it doesn't seem like a lot of these movies are on streaming. So this is interesting for me to hear because at some point I had written like a list. I was like, well, is this on streaming? Is this on streaming? I couldn't find anything. I mean, I was like, what John Wayne movies are on? I don't know why it was John Wayne, but I thought that was common, right? Because like people, like, what's the most common? He's one of the most common older movie stars. And I couldn't, there was none. There were no John Wayne movies on Netflix. And then I checked Hulu and stuff anyway. But now that Criterion is on the scene, it sounds like things are really changing. But those rotate, right? They're not always there. You kind of have to catch them when you can.
So I think in overall, and I could be wrong about this, but I think if you take, for instance, the pre-code, the Paramount pre-code programming that they have, it started March 1st. Okay. And usually what happens on Criterion Channel is that programming exists for around 2 months. So I think come May 1st, those films may disappear now. So you have to catch them while they're available. I know HBO Max in the States is tied in with TCM. So you can find a lot of classic film on HBO Max as well. There's also Canopy, which is a free library streaming app that has plenty of classic film. And there's also an app called Classics with an X at the end that is also free. And they have primarily stuff that's in the public domain. So they have a lot of classic films too. So there are pockets of classic films on streaming services. You just have to find them.
Yeah. Well, that's really cool. I don't ever want to position myself as like it's discs or nothing because streaming serves a great purpose. And I don't see a war. And people comment and they're like, oh, there's totally a war. I'm like, buddy, if there's a war, physical media lost years ago. I mean, like you look at Disney Plus, they have like 100 and something million subscribers. And, they may sell 10,000 discs of something. I mean, those compare, what's the percentage of that? Like we are, the physical media market, not that it doesn't serve a purpose because I'm a fan of it, but there are other ways. And maybe I don't say it enough, but I just want people to go watch cool things. I don't care how they watch it. Just go watch it,
Exactly. Dude, exactly 100%. You can have both. You can embrace both physical media and streaming. You don't have to choose one over the other. Let's just do both and let's enjoy as much classic film content as we can.
That's right. Yeah. Well, and we'll be right back. No, just kidding. I'm trying to think. Like I wrote a review for This Is the Night back in the day when I first it was like 2 years ago when I first watched it. But that's Cary Grant's first movie, right? That's the one I think that's his debut.
It's one of his first.
Is he the like the Olympian? Is he a javelin thrower? Right.
He is. Yeah. So he plays.
Like, there's a metaphor for you, right? He's throwing his javelin around.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So I think this was before Paramount really knew what to do with Cary Grant. He plays in This Is the Night. He plays Thelma Todd's husband, and she's actually cheating on Cary Grant with Roland Young.
Yes.
Which I found just hilarious at first, because if you had Cary Grant standing in front of you and Roland Young standing in front of you, which one would you choose? So, yeah. I mean, this film is just silly, but it's hilarious.
I'm trying to remember her name, and so I'm looking it up while you're talking. Lily DeMita. She was good in that. And then I went down this, like, research rabbit hole of Lily Demita, and then like her relationship with, I think it was Errol Flynn, if I remember.
Flynn, yeah, she was married to him.
Do you think she was ever like, Errol, was there ever anybody else?
Come on. This is Errol Flynn we're talking about. Of course there were others.
His wicked ways.
Exactly.
That's awesome. That's very cool. I watched something that you have seen, and I'm not sure what I think about it. So this is a good, after our last episode, you were very high on Xander the Great, the silent movie from 1925, and you had very nice things to say about Ben Modell and Undercrank Productions, and he reached out, and I was able to screen and it was digital too. It wasn't on a disc, it was digital. I was able to screen Xander the Great from 1925, and I wanted to talk to you about it because I'm going to be reviewing it from my site, but I'm kind of just working through what I feel about it, and I feel like you had a very emotional reaction to it, if I remember correctly. And I tend to not have, I don't have emotional reactions to a lot of things because I'm like, am I emotionally unavailable? Because I had a very scholarly reaction to it. I was like, yes, the camera placement and the blah, blah, blah. So this is a good opportunity for us to talk about it because Marion Davies it's cool what she gets to do because it's kind of like it spans some time, and it's melodrama, but it's also got Western elements. And go ahead.
Yeah, no, I agree. There's Xander the Great is one of those films that you can't really pin down what genre it is, because you're right. It starts off as sort of a melodrama, then there's some comedy in it, and then there's the end. I feel like the last quarter of the film is all action, like Western action. So it's a film that has almost everything packed into it.
Yeah. Were you worried that the bunnies were going to be okay or not? Like, I was like, don't do anything. Like 1925, those bunnies might get killed on camera. Don't do it, man.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I was glad to see that the bunnies were okay by the end of it.
Anytime I'm watching an old movie and an animal enters the frame, I'm like, uh-oh, what's gonna happen?
I agree.
But no, it was, I'm still trying to, kind of processing it and thinking what I mean about it, or figuring out what I feel about it. But it was my first Marion Davies movie. So I've done that now. So yeah, I think maybe I've seen, and because she worked all through into the 30s and maybe the 40s too. I don't, anyway, it's definitely my first Marion Davies silent. But I don't know, I liked it, but it's for me, I'm wondering for silent movies, if I'm going to be able to suspend disbelief, because I just tend to think about like, okay, how did there's a shot, there's like out in the middle of the desert, and I'm like, how did they do that? Did they have to run power out into did they run cables? Did they have a generator? How did they do this? So I don't know, but I enjoyed it, and I do want to say that Ben Modell is doing incredible work preservation wise and with his scores. That's a huge part of the appeal there. You talk about that.
Yeah, Ben Modell is wonderful, and he hosts a weekly live show. I believe it's every Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern, where he will screen silent film comedies, and he'll sit at his piano or organ and he'll just improvise. Like, he'll improvise an entire musical score for these films. And I remember one of the sessions that I attended or that I watched, he explained that most of the time he doesn't write his new score prior to screening the film. He just does it like off the cuff.
He improvises it as it's happening?
Yeah.
Wow.
And he said that, guys, this is not word for word, I'm paraphrasing from what I can remember. Sure. But he had mentioned that he feeds off the audience a lot, and he'll work the audience's reactions into what he's playing. So he's not only paying attention to the film that's playing in front of him, he's also looking and listening to the audience, and he'll improvise on the audience's reaction, which how do you do that? Like, how do you multitask like that? That takes real talent. So he's amazing. He is incredible.
Yeah, that's unbelievable.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, and sometimes he'll screen a 2-hour film. Like I remember once I attended, I think it was The Eagle, starring Rudolph Valentino, and that's about 2 hours, and he just does the whole thing just out of nowhere. He's playing this score, which is just, God, man, you gotta respect talent like that.
Yeah, that's amazing. Wow. Well, I wanted to shout that out. I wanted to thank Ben Modell here in this video, and I will be reviewing the movie for the website, for CerealAtMidnite.com. But also, I wanted to be honest about it, right? Because silent film can be challenging, and you are so much further down the road with it than I am. I've seen silent movies. I've seen Chaplin, and I have, I think we talked about Metropolis here in one of the videos, but it is a fairly intimidating thing, and I'm not nearly as versed in it as you are. So I wanted to be honest about it with people, so that, like, it's a process. And the next time I watch one, it'll be a different process too, a different reaction. The more you do it, you're like, oh, but I don't know. Transparency feels important to me. I don't know why, but I feel like I have to be, like, it's I appreciate it, but I'm not sure how I've connected with it yet. And I wanted to be real about that.
Yeah, you know what? I had a similar experience. I mean, I only started avidly watching silent film in my 30s. So within the past 5 or 6 years. Prior to that, I was always intimidated to watch silent film and film noir. Hugely intimidated me when I was growing up. I stayed away from those films because honestly, I didn't think I would understand them, or that I didn't know enough about film history at that time in my life to properly appreciate silent film and film noir. But yeah, you got to get over that. Just sit down and watch one. You may not like it, and that's fine, but at least you can say you tried it and you're discovering something new. So don't let anything or anyone intimidate you, because I know there are a few gatekeepers out there who are like, you're not a real silent film fan if you've never seen Metropolis. You know what, dude? If someone likes silent film and has not seen Metropolis, which is a great film, but even so, that does not make them less than.
Yeah.
They're discovering these things on their own time, and I don't like these gatekeepers. Let's just all appreciate silent film together. It doesn't matter what you haven't seen yet.
Is that what it was? Is that what was, because you posted about this on your Patreon recently? By the way, everybody, check out Vanessa's Patreon. It's linked in the description of this video, and we'll talk more about it in a second. But you posted about, like, the intimidation factor. Were you putting that on yourself, or was that the community? Was that the barrier that the gatekeepers had built up?
I think it was both. But growing up, I didn't have the internet growing up, so the only information I could find at that time in my life on silent film and film noir was through books. And even a lot of the books I was reading, they would say that if you haven't seen these films, then you haven't really experienced film noir or silent film.
Yeah.
Like, why say that, man? Everyone starts from zero. None of us are born knowing these films and hearing about these films. We're all on our own paths of discovery.
Yeah.
And I think we should be encouraging people. Yeah, if you want to see silent film, here are a few recommendations. Go crazy, go wild, just watch anything you can.
Mm-hmm. When I talked about Repeat Performance that just came out on Blu-ray from Flicker Alley, Eddie Muller says, he's like, is this a film noir classic? Well, some would say that it's not. And he kind of, breaks that fourth wall, because there is a lot of gatekeeping, especially in noir and I guess in silent film as well. But it's every so often I'll cover something and people will be like, I'll review a noir, and somebody will be like, that's not noir. Like, well, it has these characteristics of it. People are so quick to put up a barrier, to put something in a box, to put a gate up and be like, no. I'm like, what is that? It's a very human tendency, but I don't know what it serves other than making that person feel like they're better than. Like, I'm in the club now, but you can't be in the club. If you want to get in this club, you have to earn it. But that's not what movies are. That's not what silent movie is. That's not what film noir is. These were movies for everybody. They're entertainment. They were made to be seen. They weren't meant to be studied. The fact that we do study some of this stuff is a nice side effect, but they're just meant to be watched and to entertain us.
That's right.
It's not that deep,
Well said.
We'll be right back right after this. Well, where do we go after that? Do you have anything else you wanted to talk about as far as watching things?
Yeah, so I watched 2 documentary films actually. One of them I saw last night. It's called This Is Joan Collins. And I think in the UK it came out in late 2021, but in North America it was just released on BritBox, which is another great streaming service. So I watched that one last night and I went into it. The only thing I really knew about Joan Collins is that she had a sister who was an author, Jackie Collins, and that she starred on Dynasty. That's all I really knew about her. I didn't know anything about her earlier Hollywood films or her work. But what a fantastic documentary. So basically what it is Joan Collins, who is now, I think she's something like 88 years old. She looks fantastic, may I just say. She is a beautiful woman inside and out. And this is her narrating her life. So she goes all the way back to the beginning and you see her, she watches clips of her older interviews and clips of the films that she made in Hollywood in the 50s and 60s. And she just sits down. It's as if you're having a coffee with her or a tea with her, and she's just telling you about her life. Really charming, very heartfelt. Some of the stories that she tells the audience in this documentary are not easy. They certainly were not easy for her to experience, and they were not easy to hear her talk about. One of the things she said in this documentary was that at the time when she was in Hollywood, nearly every single man that she worked with was a predator, a sexual predator. And I mean, she's telling these stories. She's not over embellishing anything. She just tells you, this is what happened. This is who was there. This is what was said. Let's move on. So she doesn't start crying. She doesn't start saying, oh, how these people have hurt her. And no, this is what happened. Take it for what it is. Don't think that Hollywood is all, rainbows and unicorns, because it wasn't. So it was really eye-opening. And I would encourage anyone, even if you don't know anything about Joan Collins, which I certainly didn't before watching this, I would recommend that as many people see this as possible, because it was brilliant. It was a wonderful documentary.
Okay, definitely. We'll check it out. It's crazy to think how predatory things were. It's like men for so long, men are like, I want this, so you're going to give it to me.
It was crazy. I mean, she tells about the studio heads like Zanuck, people like Darryl F. Zanuck, the people at 20th Century Fox and Warner Brothers. Oh my God, if you hear these stories, and even the celebrities that she appeared with in films. So she loved Bob Hope. She said Bob Hope was a wonderful man. Bing Crosby, she wasn't too fond of, and she explains why. She's just telling these stories. This is what happened. Take it for what it is.
Wow, that sounds great.
Yeah. And the other one I watched actually on Shudder. So Shudder is another streaming service, and I took part in their 7-day free trial just to watch this. And it was Boris Karloff, The Man Behind the Monster, which came out, I think it was in the latter half of last year. This documentary made me cry. I was crying. I remember pausing it at the 14-minute mark. I was already in tears. Boris Karloff
is 14 minutes. You're already in tears.
14 minutes, and I just had tears coming down my face.
Pause.
So Boris Karloff, I mean, I've always admired him, and being a fan, a huge, massive fan of the Universal monster movies, I didn't know really anything about his personal life other than he was a horror legend. Mm-hmm. But his daughter appears as one of the talking heads in this documentary, and the story she tells about her father, oh my God, just they touch you. They hit hard, because when you're watching this man on screen, you don't think that he's a huge teddy bear, but apparently he was in real life. He was a very kind, gentle man, and this documentary was so unbelievably touching.
I haven't seen it, but I'd like to. It's on my very long list.
I think you would like it.
Absolutely.
Especially knowing how much you love the Universal Monsters movies, Heath,
Yeah.
I think you would love this documentary.
Yeah. I love Boris Karloff too. Did they, I assume you grew up with the Grinch, right?
Yes, yeah. There was maybe a good chunk of this documentary focuses on his voice work as the Grinch. So that was delightful learning more about that. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I'll definitely have to check that out.
Yeah.
That reminded me, I believe you were sent this as well, but we both have a copy of this this book, I believe, Mr. Murder: The Life and Times of Todd Slaughter. You have one of these, right?
I haven't received it yet.
Okay. Well, it's because you're in Canada land, probably.
Yeah.
My understanding is that you were being sent one of these and that we were both going to be able to talk about it at some point. But you just reminded me, I wanted to publicly, I don't think the person that sent this necessarily wants their name out there, but we'll talk more about it. But I'm slowly working my way through this, and I know very little about Todd Slaughter. So it's an education for me. And when you read books like this, you're like, I got to check that out. Okay, with the Boris Karloff documentary, are you like, I've never seen that. I got to check that out. I got to check that out. That's how it goes.
Yeah. And Todd Slaughter, I know nothing about him. So I'm really looking forward to reading that book.
Yeah. Same for me. I was just like, I've got like one or two of his movies in my collection, but he made more than one or two movies. So.
I'm sure he did. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's interesting how you can have, I mean, I've been doing this for a long time, like I've been a movie, we were talking about like Bree and I, my wife, Bree, we were talking about this last night, maybe it was the night before, but like most people just aren't that deep into film and television. Like they just don't care. And she said somebody came up to her at work and they were like, she said something about, Bree said, oh, we have that on Blu-ray. And she was like, no, there was a pilot. So this is the librarian at the school that Bree works at. And she was talking about a pile of DVDs and Blu-rays. And she's like, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know the difference between a DVD or a Blu-ray. And Bree was like, really? And she was like, yeah. And then like, the more they started talking, the more you realize that like most people just don't care about any of the stuff that I get so invested in. And if I was like, if I waxed philosophical about the career of Boris Karloff, they probably don't even know who Boris Karloff is. They'd be like, Frankenstein? I've never seen it, but I've seen pictures, So sometimes I have to remind myself that like I'm decades into a fandom that most other people don't share. And that's okay. That's fine, and I'm always discovering new things. And I guess that's a good lead into what I want to talk about. Did you finish? I want to make sure that you had reached a good conclusion point.
Yeah. You go ahead.
Okay. I just received my 4K review copy of The Apartment, Billy Wilder, nice. The Apartment. And this smacked me around. This is like the most, it's that experience where you watch a movie and then you're like, I'm watching cinema. That's what I said. We showed the Shawshank Redemption to Mini Midnight, and when it was over, like, it's a big epic ending and like strings rise and there's like a helicopter shot that pulls out. And I was like, we're watching cinema, guys. I said it over the credits. I didn't say it during the movie, but that's like, you are at certain movies and you're like, this is everything. When we see, like, you see the schedule for the TCM festival and you're like, this is cinema, That's how I felt watching this movie. So this is an amazing movie. This is directed by Billy Wilder. Well, it's co-written, produced, and directed by Billy Wilder. And it's Jack Lemmon, Shirley MacLaine, Fred McMurray. Fred McMurray the same year that My Three Sons started, but it's a very different McMurray here. And it's, I don't even want to say too much about it as far as plot wise, but it's a romance, but it's also a tragedy. And it's also really concerned about this light right here. Jeffrey, kill the lights, please. just do this. Well, where is it coming from?
Is there a window over there?
There is a window, yeah, and the sunlight has shifted, and it's because I'm sitting in I'm a little further up than I normally am. All right, I'm gonna come back here. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, perfect.
Can you hear me okay? Okay.
Yeah.
It's a beautifully shot movie. It's in black and white, and it is indefinable as far as genre. I mean, it's funny, it's sad, it's uplifting, it's everything. It's kind of just like, this is what movies are capable of. And this 4K is, I mean, it looks like it was shot yesterday. People say that and I'm like, it looks like it was just shot. I mean, 60 years removed from like all that barrier. We talk about this too, these restorations, all that barrier is just like boom, and you're just looking at the past as clear as I'm looking at you, clearer because it's in 4K. So
is that the Kino one?
Yes, this is the new Kino Lorber 4K, and it's the like I know we don't want to say like, well, we started this conversation, just watch a movie, you know, I don't care how you watch it, just watch it. But I do love 4K and I do love restorations, and I love seeing what something is capable of looking like when it's been done well. Mm-hmm. And on a proper 4K setup, this is magic. It is magic. I mean,
that's awesome.
When you ever see something and you get goosebumps just seeing an image, you know?
That's how I felt when I watched Xander the Great, where you could see Marion Davies' freckles on her face and her décolletage. That's exactly how I felt. Yeah.
We should say that is a fantastic restoration. That's a 2K scan from the Library of Congress elements, I believe, and it looks, I mean, it's almost 100 years old. Mm-hmm. And then you realize movies like that help you realize that, like, well, 100 years wasn't that long ago in the grand scheme of things. Like, everyone that we know from that period is dead now. Yeah. There's a scene, you know, that when they bring the baby in at the beginning of the movie, I'm like, well, that baby's passed away now. Even the youngest, like, time marches on. But in the grand scheme of things, 100 years ago, you're like, well, look, you know, they're doing the exact same things that we do right now. We're not different. The people have the same foibles and aspirations. So I don't know. You know what? I'll do this. Film is an equalizer, and it reminds us who we are, and it's a good mirror to who we are. And the movies that we talked about here, even starting with Xander the Great and going to The Apartment, which is about infidelity, talking more about infidelity. And kind of based on Tony Curtis's real life experiences. I'll save that for another time. But he's like, that story came from me. I was the one that was going taking people into the apartment. Mm-hmm. Film is a reminder. Like, I know there's a place for escapism, and we love escapism. We watch movies for entertainment. But one of the consequences of what we talk about here at Classic Film Flavors is that by looking further into the past, you realize that we are always the same. Humanity is fairly consistent with what we do. And that's both beautiful and challenging. And film can make you better. Film can help you to be a kinder person. And it can help you to understand that we're not better than anybody else, you know? And I don't know exactly how to put a button on that, but you're nodding and you're agreeing. So I'm going to do you have anything you want to add to this?
You know what, one of the attractions about classic film for me personally is that you're right. We haven't changed. There's been 100 years, more than 100 years since the dawn of Hollywood and of filmmaking, but really we haven't changed. We're still going to see these films just like people 100 years ago did. Mm-hmm. There's still that love for film, for art. There's still that curiosity. So have we changed much? Not really, no. We're still sitting in those cinema seats with no lights on, looking at a screen and listening to these people in front of us saying their dialogue and watching these action sequences. And to me, that is, honest to God, it's magic that we are still doing the same thing as audiences did over 100 years ago.
Gold Diggers, 1933. You just reminded me. They talk in the special features of that about how, you know, that's a movie about like, yay, we're in the money and all this stuff. But of course they weren't. And that movie existed in 1933 to say, just forget about your problems, come to the movies and just have a good time. And here we are. There's a whole AMC ad campaign with Nicole Kidman right now where it's like the movies are saying, you know, like, come back to the movies. The movies are our hope. And it's the same thing that they were doing in 1933, which is just leave your troubles at the door and come forget about them, because in the movies you can escape to whatever world you want to. And that's why we love it. That's why it endures. And that's why it's important too. So yeah, it's an earnest ending to this conversation, but it's true. It's real. Tell people about your Patreon, your Patreon campaign, your Patreon, your Patreon jam.
Well, I started a Patreon all about classic film in late January. So it's been a few months, and already I feel like I have made the most wonderful friends. I have met the most amazing people through it. And actually, starting on April 1st, I lowered every single price on the tiers. So you'll see all lower price tiers because I mean, quite frankly, we're all feeling inflation right now. So I thought it was my responsibility to do that and to offer that to the people who are part of my Patreon group. And it's been wonderful. We've been doing virtual Zoom chats together, learning more about each other, giving each other film recommendations and book recommendations. We just finished reading our first book club pick, which was Cameraman by Dana Stevens. That's the brand new biography of Buster Keaton. So it's been wonderful. It's been a wonderful experience.
That's great. And you post all the time. You post pretty much daily.
Daily. Yeah, it's been daily. Yep.
Yeah. It's been great to see that take wings and fly. And it's been great to look at the light effects on that.
It's been very rewarding, and people have been wonderful, absolutely wonderful.
You're great at it too, and I support it, and I hope that other people do too. Again, I'll put links to that in the description of this video. Please go over there and check that out. Links to the Serial at Midnight Patreon as well. Both Vanessa and I are basically viewer supported. We are making this our careers, and anything that you can do to help us, we would really appreciate. We both set tiers very low so that everybody can play, and we want you to be, we want you to come hang out with us. So anything else you wanted to hit your Twitter while we're here?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Vanessa Butino. I am always on Twitter, so reach out, please. I love talking to you guys.
Keep leaning forward and getting back into that light. It's like, and you can remember kids, tie it into our, remember kids, Todd Slaughter coming for you. I wanted to say we may be doing some interviews soon, so if the next time you see us, there may be an interview with you here. So don't be surprised if we expand this format and start talking to some people that are involved with this on a whole different level. So exciting things are happening at Classic Film Flavors, and we are so glad that you're here. So Vanessa, thanks as always for having this chat with me.
Oh, thanks very much.
And guys, thank you for hanging out and making it to the end of this video. Tell us what you're watching in the comments below. Tell us what you think about some of the topics. Silent film, film noir, lots to discuss. So let's talk about it. Guys, thank you so much. Take care. Until next time, we will catch you later.
Bye.
Bye.
I felt like you were on an episode of Goosebumps. You know, when they're all sitting around the campfire and there's the light illuminating them.
I can't find it when I try it. There we go. It's like,
but honestly, I didn't even notice it until you said it.
Maybe nobody else will too, but I bet they will.
No one will notice.